What a conference it's been. What a great couple of days. What an amazing set of talks and workshops. I mean, congratulations to the Advait web team for pulling this off. I think well-deserved applause, and we should be applauding them again. And also, well done, all of you, for getting to the end. Congratulations, we're nearly there. My name is Advait Sarkar. I'm a researcher, and for the last 13 years, I've been studying how AI affects knowledge work and society more broadly, and designing tools that help people improve the quality of their work with AI assistance. Now, when Louise invited me to give this closing keynote at Advait Web, I was afraid, and I was excited. I was afraid because I've never really spoken before an audience of web professionals before, and I was worried that I wouldn't have anything meaningful to say. I hope I do, but one caveat I must give you is that this talk raises more questions than it provides answers. But from interacting with many of you over the course of the day, I think that's fitting because you seem to be a community that appreciates the value of a good question and is skeptical of easy answers. So that's the afraid bit. I was excited because the web professions strike me as a really diverse and interesting set of knowledge work skills. We've seen so many disciplines and trades and skills and workflows represented over these 2 days and in this room: design, engineering, content writing, research, program management, and so on, right? But these knowledge professions are also at the frontier of being affected, both in terms of risks and opportunities, by generative AI. And the effects are at 3 levels that I'll talk about today. There's the individual level, where it shapes how we think while we work with AI. There's the team and organization level, where it affects how we collaborate with each other, how we structure our organizations, how we think about workflows and handoff. I think you had a keynote yesterday about handoff. And taking a step even further, the 3rd level is the industry as a whole. I think generative AI throws into crisis the idea that the web might even be for humans in the future. Hence the title of the talk, Why Would Anyone Visit a Website? But we have to build up to that. And let's start with the first rung, which is generative AI and human thought. Now, a few years ago, before ChatGPT, it became apparent to me that generative AI was going to affect a lot of different workflows. And I thought it would be interesting to take a look at some communities of early adopters, whether they were in programming or in visual art or in storytelling, and see how generative AI had shifted their workflows. And this was the result of that analysis, this meta-analysis of a number of other studies, that AI was shifting their work from material production, that's physically typing out text or arranging pixels on the page, because AI does that stuff, to what I was calling at that time critical integration. So it's pretty much deciding where and how to use AI in the workflow. You can think of it kind of like a sandwich. The human decides where and how to use AI in a workflow. AI handles some of the production, and the system, the human, again, critically assesses that AI output and adjusts it to the workflow. So that was a few years ago. But of course, since then, this is no longer about early adopters, right? With 1.2 billion users since the 3 years, in the 3 years since ChatGPT's release, this generation of generative AI is the fastest spreading general purpose technology in history. And it's used by 1 in 6 firms, 1 in 3 workers. And you can think of this generative shift as happening along 3 axes. There's intensification, meaning things that we were already automating or starting to automate, we're automating more of. Extensification is things that we weren't previously automating, we are now automating. And acceleration is we're doing all of this more frequently than before. And that changes the picture quite a bit from this. And we've been studying how that affects knowledge workers, in particular, the quality of their thinking. So let's take a look at creativity. On an individual level, you might think that AI is a creativity boost, giving us rapid access to new ideas. But numerous studies have shown that on a collective level, a group of workers using AI assistants, when they're performing some open-ended task, produces a smaller range of ideas or outcomes than a group working manually. Right? And this effect has been shown in multiple domains. It's been shown in programming, in creative writing, in strategy consultancy, in visual art, in image captioning, numerous studies, very high samples. The effect is pretty robust. Or consider critical thinking. Last year, my team surveyed knowledge workers about their use of AI, and they reported that they put less effort into critical thinking when they were working manually, when they were working with generative AI, than when they were working manually. Right? And this effect was greater when they had greater confidence in AI's ability to do a job, and less confidence in themselves. And again, this reduction in critical thinking effort has been documented by other studies. Or consider memory. Again, studies show that when people rely on AI to write for them, they remember less of what they wrote. And when they rely on AI to read for them, for instance, by reading AI-generated summaries, again, it's hardly surprising that they remember less than if they had engaged with the document or even engaged with the summary sections inside a document. And finally, consider metacognition, which is the ability to think about your own thinking process. Again, a meta-analysis conducted by, a qualitative meta-analysis conducted by my team of many studies of Gen AI use showed that there was significant metacognitive reasoning required when working with generative AI. So these are things like the applicability, is Gen AI applicable? What really are my task goals? How do I decompose my task so Gen AI can understand it? Can I evaluate the output, right? So these are things that are built into the process of working directly with a material, such as text or code. And they become problematic when that material engagement gets intermediated by AI. Right? Okay, so if you take all of this together, it's quite clear that generative AI-assisted workflows have profound implications for human thought. And this extends even to seemingly trivial, mundane tasks. You might be thinking, okay, let's offload the everyday stuff to AI and do the high-level strategic thinking ourselves. But again, numerous studies have shown that not doing the mundane, everyday stuff leaves you less prepared for the complex and exceptional cases. Right? So we still need to get our hands dirty with boring stuff from time to time. So the situation is not looking very good. And we want to build tools that do something different. We want the benefits, the awesome speed and flexibility of the technology. But we don't want it to deteriorate the quality of our work or the quality of our thinking. Right? So we've been exploring, we and other researchers around the world have been exploring what to do about this from a design-led perspective. Right? This is one approach we've been exploring. It's the idea of AI as provocateur. A short essay about this appeared as the cover of the Communications of the ACM last year, which is the computer science's largest trade magazine. And it's just basically a really simple conceptual shift. AI as an assistant metaphor is all about speed and efficiency and getting the job done. But beyond getting the job done, a provocateur might help you figure out what the job is. Beyond getting it done faster, it might help you get it done better. Beyond getting you to the right answers, it might help you ask the right questions. Right? So how do we build something like this? Well, we take a leaf out of the book of education. Turns out educators have been thinking about how to teach critical thinking for at least 100 years, if not more. I mean, at least formally. You could potentially say it goes back to Socrates. So in the 80s, a researcher called Gabriel Salomon showed a very interesting thing. He developed an interface for students, where while they were reading a text, it could be, you can think of the assigned text in their classroom, like a piece of literature or maybe a chapter from their textbook. From time to time, the interface showed them metacognitive guiding questions. Okay, these are small questions like, what kind of image have I created from the text, or what do I understand from the text so far? And what he found, and this effect again has been since replicated and shown in multiple other studies, that just asking these sorts of questions can significantly improve reading comprehension. And what's more, when you take the reading aid away, the effect persists. So students who've had some practice with the reading aid become better readers. That effect endures when you take it away. Right? So we thought, okay, so Salomon and others have shown this for students in the 80s. Well, what does it look like in the context of AI in real knowledge work? So we did a study to see if what these metacognitive guiding questions, we call them provocations, help in a task, a very common knowledge work task, which is spreadsheet shortlisting. You can think of shortlisting as selecting a small set of items from a larger set. Very common examples are you've got a long list of job applicants and you have to select a small set to interview, or you're apartment hunting and you've got a long list of apartments, but you can only view in person a few of them. This kind of task comes up again and again. And anyway, the point is that we compared two versions of a spreadsheet AI assistance interface. In the first version, you had a very standard AI assistance experience where you just put in you've got your data set, you put in the thing that you're trying to do as a prompt. You get a bunch of suggestions for factors to consider, and you can just click apply, 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 and each of these rows is then scored according to those factors, and this shortlist is automatically created by sorting the spreadsheet. In the second condition, the flow is like this. It's almost exactly the same, except for every factor that is suggested, we have these little metacognitive guiding questions that highlight some limitation. Oh, I suggested you this, but this is a reason why you might not want to do this, right? Or this is an alternative to what I suggested, speaking from the AI's perspective, right? That's what these provocations contained. And what we found was that these provocations can increase the outcome diversity. So you remember that loss of creativity I was talking about earlier? The smaller range of ideas? That can be reversed here. So the group that had provocations produced a wider range of shortlists, final shortlists, than the group that didn't have provocations, right? And this is an open-ended task. There's no right answer for which things should be in the shortlist. So we're really trying to see, do participants in the study exercise their own opinions and professional judgment? Okay. It also increases reflection. We used a think aloud protocol. I know it's dicey to quantify think aloud, but we did. And across multiple sorts of categories of provocation, of reflections, we see the provocations condition increase people's reflective thinking. Okay, provocations are not the only kind of thing that we can do here. Another thing that we've tested is the idea of engaging more deeply with the material in a way that gets away from chat. So on the left-hand side, you have a very standard sort of AI-assisted artifact creation workflow. So you've got the chat, and you've got the content. So you can think of this as like Claude artifacts, or OpenAI Canvas, or Copilot pages, or even editors like Cursor, or vibe coding interfaces like Lovable. They have this basic sort of pattern. There's a chat, and then there's the stuff you're making. So we said, what if we added an outline pane, a third pane, where instead of saying to the agent, you do this, you do this, you do this, we have a sort of declarative description, like a spec, essentially, of what it is you want. You all know what an outline is. I don't need to over-explain this. And what we found is that adding this interface and allowing people to express what they want in this term instead of like this improves their ability to remember what they did and their ability to construct that argument. Okay. Some colleagues of mine at MIT did this really interesting study where they were developing an AI system that is supposed to help people spot logical fallacies. And you can think of this as being part of like maybe misinformation detection or something like that. And they had one version where the AI system provided its suggestion about whether there's a fallacy or not, and a second version where it presented almost the same information, but as a question. And they found that the system that presents the AI suggestion as a question actually improves the user's performance on the overall task of spotting the logical fallacies, because the user's thinking for themselves. And the AI sometimes make mistakes. Here's another piece of work by our team. We call it promptions or prompt options, but the sort of fancy academic term for this is dynamic prompt middleware. Basically, when you send a message to a chatbot to say, I'm going to make something, please help me make something, instead of just getting the response, you get this dynamically generated set of options with lightweight UI elements that are also dynamically generated for the specific prompt that you put in, basically to elicit more context. So all of this stuff, so help me draft a keynote talk for a web design conference. There's a lot of iteration after that when you have to read a lot of content and then say, oh, actually, I realize this isn't what I want. I didn't have enough context in my initial prompt. I need to add some more detail. We kind of short-circuit that. So there's an efficiency argument to be made here where I can quickly select what the focus is that I want and so on. But when we studied this with participants, we found that actually sometimes showing options made them realize they hadn't even thought about what they were trying to do in terms of drafting their keynote for the design conference. Maybe they hadn't thought about whether it would be better to consider design principles or case studies. It's kind of an interesting thing. More broadly, there's a category of interventions called cognitive forcing functions. There's many such things. Many researchers have studied different versions of this. Some things as simple as delaying the output before showing it, or making the human make a choice first, or confidence highlighting, as is shown on the right, where we can use the probability of tokens to highlight high confidence and low confidence output. These are things that have all been shown to improve the quality of thinking of human when they're working with AI and reduce over-reliance and things like that. So the first section of my talk draws to a close. Here's the first set of questions that I'm not necessarily going to answer. For you, implications for you, as users of generative AI yourselves, I want you to think, did I engage with the material? Am I satisficing? That is to say, have I just taken the first thing AI gave me, or am I making some meaningful, critical changes to this? Did I learn and grow from this experience? AI did something for me. Have I learned anything as a professional? What will I remember? How can I be accountable? If my boss asks me what this is, or if a colleague needs help with building on it, can I support them? Can I fulfill my accountable functions as a member of this organization? But you're not just users, right? In this audience, you're builders. You are the people who are making tools for other knowledge workers. You're building the Figmas and the Canvas and the Dropboxes and the Google Docses online. And you must be thinking about how to integrate AI features into your tools to help your users get their work done faster or better, right? So I want you to think about your AI implementations and your tools. Does your tool's AI implementation ask questions? Does it provide multiple alternatives so that the user at least has to make a choice? Does it highlight the limitations of the output? And I don't mean just having a disclaimer that says AI output might be incorrect, check important information, blah, 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 right? I mean a real, genuine limitation of the specific suggestions that you're giving. And so on, right? So that's the story from the individual knowledge worker perspective. Now let's pop up a level. And consider what generative AI is doing to to the firm. There's many competing visions for this. This is one compelling one. This is from Microsoft's Work Trend Index annual report earlier this year. It's what they call the frontier firm. So in a future where you can buy intelligence on tap and spin up sort of intelligent agent employees, eventually, we're going to go through a set of phases. The exact order is not particularly important, but in the end, you'll end up with this world where we're hiring agent employees, and the role of the humans that's left is to orchestrate these agents and give them instructions. The agent employees are actually doing the work. The humans in the organization are orchestrating the work. They are agent bosses. So who are these humans, and what kind of expertise do they have? Well, one kind of interesting thing that is happening is there already seems to be kind of a blurring of capacities because of generative AI, right? So because of generative AI assistance, designers and product managers are able to accomplish some of the tasks that previously it would have taken an engineer to do. Similarly, designers and engineers are needing to take on more of the kind of work that looks like project management. Or product managers and engineers can do more of the work that previously would have taken a designer to do. Some of you are very skeptical of this picture, and you should be, right? We'll get to that in a minute. But there are risks here, but there are also opportunities. And this blurring is something that is being perceived by real professionals in the industry. So earlier this year, again, my team and I conducted the world's first empirical study of vibe coding, where we took a very fine-grained lens approach to analyzing vibe coding sessions in detail to see, like, on a moment-by-moment basis, what is it like for people to do vibe coding in practice. And we definitely found that there is a blending of prototyping and production, and that vibe coders are deploying more than just traditional programming expertise. In order to do their work, they need to take on more of the kinds of expertise that product managers have. And they also have this thing called AI expertise, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And one thing I want to note is the idea of ambient competence. So this is a sense of, I wouldn't have done this thing before, but now because it's really cheap and easy to do it, I will do it, right? Or I can do it. So ambient abilities that people have because AI assistance is available. Okay, so that's programmers. Again, earlier this year, I was part of a team that studied product managers, and we took a look at how 800 product managers are deploying AI in their role as product managers. And we saw a variety of opinions, but many product managers reported that they saw a blurring or expansion of their role. Gen AI to prototype helped them bridge divides in expertise and communicate more effectively. It was an opportunity to develop new skills. They recommended that we need to try AI for areas that your peers work in, and we all need to be more of a Swiss Army knife. But this wasn't just about doing more work and taking on the work of your peers, right? It's about strengthening their core PM role, being more conversant and being more having more agency to work in other disciplines strengthens your core role. Okay. So what are we learning from all of this at this point? Expertise is not dead, right? We're not going to replace any disciplinary group with some other group plus AI. You can't replace a designer, with an engineer plus DALL-E, or you can't replace an engineer with a designer plus, Claude. I mean, I think that much is obvious to this audience. That core disciplinary expertise remains fundamental because people in a discipline who are grounded in a discipline have greater scope of what they can tackle. They're more aware of what is possible. They exhibit greater control over the system. They're better able to steer it and verify its output. And they also have greater resilience to AI failures. Okay. If somebody who isn't a programmer is vibe coding and the thing breaks, they're stuck. Okay, but it's undeniable that there seems to be a greater potential for ambient rules. People can do more stuff than they were able to do before. And this means that a lot of things that were previously too expensive to try suddenly have a much lower barrier to entry. A key enabler in all of this is AI literacy. I don't really like the term, but this seems to be what the term of art is. Basically, how well can you use AI stuff? And what we've learned about AI literacy through these and other studies is that you can't really teach it. Despite all of the courses that promise to make you a ChatGPT Pro and all of the garbage on LinkedIn with like prompt cheat sheets and stuff, that's not going to make you AI literate. The only thing that we've seen that works consistently well is direct first-hand experience and continuous experimentation. So trying different things, trying them again and again, trying them constantly, trying things at different levels, right? And everybody, because they have unique disciplinary and professional expertise, will develop this AI literacy in their own specific way. Okay. Another thing to note is that managing AI is not like managing people. And I will make you don't need studies to tell you this, but I will make two observations that maybe in hindsight will be obvious, and will maybe perhaps throw some complexity onto this picture of what it actually means to be an agent boss. The first is AI is not a human resource. People often say, oh, I treat AI like my intern or something like that, Except you can't really ask your intern to do the same thing 1,000 times. I mean, maybe you can, but you'd probably get some sort of reputation if you did that. But you can't generally do that with an intern. You can't ask the intern to do the same thing in 12 different languages. At the same time, with an intern, you're responsible for growing them. You're responsible for making them a better professional. You're responsible for modeling good behavior and coaching them and caring them, right? That's all stuff you don't have to do with AI, okay? So it's not a human resource. And then accountability cannot be delegated. So when you're leading a team of actual humans and you delegate stuff to them, those actual humans can then become accountable for the work that is delegated to them, right? They are actors in a society, embedded in an economy. If your agent tells you, if your agent messes something up, you're still the one who's going to be fired, basically. So you can never delegate that. It doesn't mean anything. So the burden of verification, being able to check things are correct, being able to justify why something is done, being able to remember what was done, right? That's something that can't be delegated to a non-human actor. That's just, by definition, fundamentally impossible, regardless of how good AI systems get, right? Okay. Here's another set of questions that I don't have answers to, but I hope that you all think about these questions in your organizations. What was expensive and is now abundant, relatively speaking? What could a designer with ambient coding abilities do, right? Not replace engineers, but can it make them better designers in some way? Similarly, what could an engineer with ambient design abilities do? How do we hire for these abilities? How do we grow our existing talent? Is our current org structure appropriate? Are these traditional seams in our development process still appropriate, right? You've got research to design, to content writing, to engineering, all of these seams. And I know you had a keynote about this, about handoff as well yesterday. So I'm definitely not the first person to be talking about this. This is well known in your industry. You have this entire field of declarative design or design-to-code tools and these collaborative AI workspaces that are meant to use AI basically as the glue between different disciplinary silos. These are pertinent questions. Finally, I want to pop up one final level and say all of this doesn't matter if people aren't visiting websites anymore, right? This is a crisis that generative AI or AI writ large throws the web into, I think. You know what I'm talking about. I'll get to it in a minute. But what I want to say first is that, again, I'm not the first to think about this. Some very clever researchers wrote a very underrated paper a few years ago called The Dilemma of the Direct Answer, where they took a look at the history of information retrieval techniques and did some analysis. And their basic idea is that when you give people a set of documents that are relevant to their query, but you don't give them the answer directly, that's actually beneficial for answering the query, because often the query is not necessarily formulated in the best possible way, and often there's no one correct answer, right? So giving them a set of highly relevant documents is actually better than giving them a direct answer, and they call that peak retrievability. And they hypothesize that we're actually past peak retrievability, because information retrieval technology has gotten too good. It's capable of identifying some text that answers the question from within billions of documents, despite the fact that for many types of questions, no direct answers should be given. And yet, direct answers are eating the web. This is not new. Again, we already have a fairly old technology of direct answers. Where was Picasso born? From well-schematized, formatted data, you get Malaga, Spain. We can now do this, because of large language models, we can now do this for arbitrary queries, right? On the right, you see, what are Picasso's most famous paintings? What are the essential aspects of Picasso's philosophy, right? Both of these search engines ingest sources from the web, process them using a language model, and present an answer that directly answers the query as it is formulated, right? And none of these sources are getting any human traffic anymore, okay? So direct answers are eating the web, but these are all search engines. Is search safe? Okay, is AI itself eating web search? Is web search going away? Not a day goes by that I don't see an article like this, where somebody is being interviewed and they say, oh, I don't use Google anymore, I just ask ChatGPT everything, right? Okay. Well, okay, this is happening, but perhaps the statistics right now and the studies right now show that it's not quite as dramatic as that. It's shaping search, but many users still default to Google because search is a decades-long habit. It's very hard to erode, and it's also built into all of our devices, although that is changing. Again, there's some nice statistics from Break the Web, where you can see in the blue line, web search is remaining relatively static, but this purple line of generative AI use is going up. And one must wonder, this can't go on forever, because human attention is finite. And at some point, this trend will start eating into this trend, right? And you might wonder, well, why is this? Search engines work nicely. Why are people going to ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever? Well, it's because the internet sucks. The internet is a complete cesspit. The average person's experience of doing the average thing on the internet is horrible, okay? The other day, I wanted to figure out how to cook a mushroom stew. So I first went to a search engine that showed me a bunch of sponsored results. I looked through the search results to come to the first recipe that I thought looked nice, and I went on the page, and the first thing I get is this nice cookie consent banner, request to make notification, request to have a notification. Why would a website that hosts recipes need to give me desktop notifications? What is it notifying me about? Okay, so I go through the cookie consent, but thankfully it has a reject all button, although because the green button is accept all and so big, I almost clicked that by accident. When I was through the cookie consent banner, as soon as I got in, there was a nice auto-playing video here. The whole screen went dark, and I was invited to, give my email in this thing. Kept scrolling, looked at this some lovely ads from Amazon to buy some Tupperware, okay? And then I kept scrolling, right? And this is not even the full page. My browser couldn't take a screenshot of the entire. This is the bottom half of the page, right? Where is the recipe? Does anybody know where the recipe is? Does anybody have any rough idea where the recipe is? Yeah, it's kind of in the bottom. This is where the recipe is, okay? where the recipe is. Now, when I asked Copilot to give me a mushroom stew recipe, this is what my user experience was. I just got the recipe, right? No bullshit. So if you can imagine this being the average experience of doing everything on the web, okay, this is an exaggeration, and I know the people in this audience definitely are not contributing to this problem. It's no wonder, right, that people prefer an experience that looks like this. And we have the dawn of these agentic browsing tools, right? Here's a selection: OpenAI's Atlas. Oh, I'm not actually sure which one is which, but I'll just read out the names of them. OpenAI's Atlas, Opera Neon, Perplexity Comet, Dia, and then there's agential sort of computer operating agents like Manus or ChatGPT computer use, or Copilot computer use in the researcher agent, right? Now, these things basically make chat the interface to the web, because you can chat with something, and it can do your shopping for you, it can book your flights, it can plan your holiday, it can interact, it can, use your Outlook calendar, whatever, right? Okay, so there's a layer that's completely intermediating between the web. How does this end? Again, one potential view of this is what's known as the agentic economy, where you've got users interacting with agents, and then you've got your businesses who have business agents, and the agents interact with each other. The user doesn't interact with the business at all in any way, right? So consumer assistant agents could directly find and negotiate with service agents to do stuff on the web and make, make dining reservations, stream music. Okay. But so how is one to respond to this? Well, here's a short-term solution, and some of you might be thinking of this already for your own webs. Like, one solution is, okay, we need to make websites more legible to AI tools so that, when people eventually start using these AI tools to browse the web, because the experience is so much better, apparently, at least our websites should be, best practices and compliant. So we should use things like accurate schema markup and semantic HTML, and we should write an LLMs.txt file, right? But I think this doesn't go far enough. This vision doesn't go far enough. Because for a lot of digital goods and services, right? Digital goods and services, digital experiences, things that are just consumed online, that don't require brick and mortar like oil and material goods to be moved around. You don't even need this right half of the diagram anymore, right? You just have a vibe web. Because if the user can conceive it, then AI can create it. Right? You don't need to be interacting with a browser to produce some content for you that somebody else has produced, because your system can generate arbitrary software on demand for you, right? Arbitrary content on demand for you. So why would you even need to be interacting with a business of any kind at all? And I think this is really, it's far-fetched, but I think this is a kind of long-term, long-horizon prospect that we should be thinking about. So I'll close by thinking about how we respond to this, challenge. I think the way we start by responding to this challenge is with direct experience that cannot be intermediated, right? Think of the sensory experience of looking at a painting, or of watching a film, or of playing a game, or of going to a concert, right? Why do we do these things? We do these things because we're there to experience something directly with our senses that we could not have conceived of ourselves. It is literally an act of communication from one human mind, somebody's idea that I could not have had myself. Because if I could have had it myself, then I could have asked an AI to make it for me. But I'm here because somebody else has had an idea, and they're communicating it in a way that I have to receive directly through my own senses, my own impressions. right? That's why I was so delighted to see other speakers talk about this earlier today. I was really delighted to see OrcDev's 8-bit CN project, which just delights in the fact that your website might look like a game, right? Or Steve Upton's provocation at the very start of the day that we should build something wacky based on things that we enjoy from sci-fi, which is go out and build it. You wouldn't send an agent to go and listen to a concert for you. You wouldn't send an agent to look at a painting for you. That defeats the point of direct sensory experience, right? So my provocation to you is to think about what aspects of the experiences you are building for your users are things that are, by definition, meant to be experienced by the human and could not be replaced. What inspiration can you take from the rich history and world of art that humanity can draw from? So with that, I'll end it there. Those are my key takeaways. Thank you all very much, and congratulations, it's the end.